Hello everyone, welcome back. AITAH for only paying for one of my daughter's weddings and down payment? Original post November 17, 2024. So, I, 50 meters, have 3 kids, Sarah, 35F, Jessica, 25F, and Ben, 23 meters. My wife and I had Sarah when we were both 16. It wasn't easy, but with both our parents' support, we managed to finish college while raising her. When it was time for her to go to college, we didn't have the money to help her. So she took out loans and paid for them herself. We learned from our mistakes and started saving for her siblings Jessica and Ben, who got around a $100,000 college fund and had no debt. Through all of this, Sarah never complained. She finished her education, got a fantastic job, and managed to repay the loans in just 3 years while staying with us to save as much as possible. She also helped us a lot by babysitting her younger siblings and always being selfless, perhaps even to a fault. When she told me 5 years ago she was getting married, I talked to my wife and expressed how bad I felt that we had never been able to do much for her. I wanted to give her the inheritance I got from my grandmother, which was around $50,000, to help pay for her wedding and a down payment on a house. Luckily, my wife agreed, and even though Sarah didn't really need it, I know it meant a lot to her. The issue is this: Jessica is getting married next year and assumed we would plan a similar gift for her. She was quite surprised when I told her we never discussed such plans and didn't have the budget for it. She told us it wasn't fair that we paid for her sister but wouldn't do the same for her. I tried to explain the situation, telling her that, in the long run, we spent twice as much on her and her brother as we ever did on Sarah. However, she insisted that Sarah was already well off, noting that Sarah and her husband had paid off their house and were doing extremely well financially. I told her this had nothing to do with how much money her sister had, it was about us finally being able to do something for our oldest child, who had to sacrifice so much because we had her at such a young age. She didn't take it well, left angry, and won't speak to us. My wife thinks we should maybe take out a small loan and give her the money because she isn't used to not talking to her kids and feels sad about being left out of the wedding preparations. She's even afraid we won't get invited to the wedding. But I have put my foot down and won't budge because Jessica is not entitled to our money. Now even Sarah is saying this is getting out of hand and has offered to help pay half the money. Personally, I'm at a point where I'd rather burn the $50,000 than give it to Jessica. Sarah and my wife think this is not worth destroying our family over, but I think giving in will only make her more entitled in the long run. Ops reply to some of the comments. I gave her the money because I felt like a bad father. I thought about all the time we missed from her childhood and the less expensive presents she got compared to her siblings because we just didn't have the money. She never complained or said how unfair it was, even though she deserved better. I didn't give her the money as a reward, I gave it to her as an apology for us being stupid kids and not being able to give her the childhood she deserved. Update November 24, 2024. Thank you all for the fantastic comments and personal messages from my last post. After reading the comments, I felt even more convinced I was in the right. I sat down with my wife to talk. Following many of your suggestions, I showed her the post and asked her to read it. She wasn't happy, especially when she saw how many people had read it, but she was curious. This has been on her mind a lot lately, and she wanted to know what everyone thought. She had a few issues with my comments. She believes that when I said I would rather burn the money, it shows I need to change my approach to problem solving. While it might be easy for people on the internet to suggest parents cut off contact with their child, she is not ready to lose her little girl. Additionally, she thinks my statement about doing my duty and wanting to take care of myself comes across as selfish and is not something a parent should say. She believes there is a reasonable compromise. Instead of giving Jessica the full $50,000, we could offer her half for the wedding. This way, we could cover most of the expenses from our savings, borrow the rest from Sarah if needed, and pay her back within a year. I told her right away that I wasn't going to do that. I told her we could separate our finances and she could return to work full-time to help Jessica pay for the wedding. However, I made it clear I was done. As selfish as it may seem, I don't feel obligated to Jessica anymore, and I want to enjoy my life while I still can. She replied, as she always does, that I am stubborn and said she would take that step if it meant keeping the family together. I told her it was fine but not to complain to me about her health when she went back to work full-time. A couple of days ago, she came to me and said she agreed with my proposal. We made a plan to open a joint bank account where we would deposit our monthly expenses. After that, we could each use our personal money however we liked. We decided on an amount to keep in our savings account for emergencies and agreed to split the remaining funds 50-50. I even agreed to cover 60% of the money needed for our joint expenses. This is the first time we will have more than one bank account, so I'm a bit nervous about how it will turn out. I believe she also mentioned talking to her boss about working more hours, but I want to avoid getting involved in that discussion. I spoke with Sarah and expressed my concerns about giving Jessica any money, which I still believe is a bad idea. However, Sarah insists that she wants to help. She mentioned that while she agrees with my viewpoint, she doesn't want their mom to return to work full-time. She clarified that her decision to help was aimed at supporting their mom, not Jessica. I told her it was her money and she could do as she pleased, but like her mom, I wouldn't involve myself in the situation any further. Right before I wrote this post, I sent an email to Jessica expressing my feelings. I clarified where I stood and mentioned she could decide how involved I would be in her wedding. I don't expect a reply, but now I'll have to wait and see what happens. Op added this info in the comments. I forgot to mention this in my post, but part of our agreement is that she should not take out any loans with interest. If she decides to borrow money from friends or family, that's her choice, but I want to avoid having another bank loan under my name. However, I'm confident she won't need to borrow much if she only gives $25,000 for the wedding, especially since it appears that Sarah is planning to cover half of that amount, which, again, I still think is a bad idea. It's not $50,000. I realize now I didn't explain something clearly. My wife wants to pay $25,000 for the wedding, which she and Sarah have agreed to split. She believes this is a reasonable compromise, but I disagree. That's it for now. See you in the next post.